Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the next Digital Pan-Asian FP&A Board. My name is Larissa Melnichuk. I'm Managing Director at FP&A Trends Group, an international FP&A board, and I'm here today to facilitate this interesting discussion. And the subject for discussion is a new age of zero-based budgeting. Just a quick update that today we have over 600 registrations from 31 countries. The majority of you coming from Asia, it's more than 70%. And we are wonderful, we are happy to see such an interest in our meeting and also in this particular subject as well. Just a quick update on meetings in Asia. As you know, we have 5 physical chapters in Asia. But today, obviously, there are more countries joining us. And those are the meetings that we had previously. The last 4 meetings, as you can see, they were digital. This is the fifth one, which is digital. The last 5, actually. Today is the 6th digital meeting. Last time we were talking about FP&A, before it was beyond budgeting, transformation, many interesting subjects, actually. What we are going to do today. This is the agenda, quick reminder about the agenda. I will start with quick learnings and successes of the subject, ZBB. And then we will talk about ZBB as a management system and culture. Then what about team's readiness and how to manage the change that is connected with ZBB. We will look at a practical case study from Imeris in Malaysia. Then what are the key ZBB technology enablers? And what are the latest FP&A recruitment trends in Asia? It would be the last presentation. Of course, there will be conclusions and recommendations, and there will be a Q&A session at the end. This is a good time for our panelists to come and join me. I would like to make a very quick introduction, so please join me. I would like to say that we have a very international panel, actually, coming across 3 continents. Amazing. So please, can you join me? Russ, are you there? Let us start very quick introductions. First is Tom. Tom is joining us from London. He's a member of London FP&A Board. He has more than 15 years of experience in commercial finance, FP&A controlling, internal audit, and so on and so far. And at the moment, he has full financial responsibility for Capita's contracts with Financial Services Authority. He set up and managed a zero-based budgeting process within Haynes, quite an interesting case study. And at the moment, Tom is Portfolio Finance Director at Capita. So today, Tom is going to talk about ZBB as a management system and culture. Tom, you're welcome. Happy to see you here, Tom. Thank you. And we are moving on. Vincent Bunsen Lin, who is Chief Financial Officer, Asia Pacific at Data Logic. Vincent is our Singapore FP&A board member, so we met some time ago. He has more than 25 years of finance experience and a very international experience as well, in particular in Asia. His interests are in transforming finance organizations through automation, business partnering, the center of excellence. And today, Vincent is going to share with us his practical experience on how to manage change for ZBB. Vincent, welcome.
Fantastic to be here, Larissa, and everyone.
Thank you. We are moving on, and we have Nicolas Perrin, CFO at FN Herstal. Nicolas is joining us from France today, but he's a member of our Brussels FP&A board member. This is where we met. A senior finance executive with over 20 years of experience, Master of Science in Finance and MBA, deep knowledge of leading global multidisciplinary and multicultural teams across many countries and across different industries. Nicolas was heavily involved in deployment of zero-based budgeting in Malaysia, where he was based. So this is the program in Imeris. And today it would be sharing of this particular case study. Nicolas, welcome.
Thank you, Larissa. Very happy to be with you today.
Excellent. Thank you, Nicholas. We have Pras Chatterjee, who is joining us from Toronto, Canada. Good morning, Pras, 5 o'clock in the morning. Pras he did multiple presentations at FP&A Trends webinars, but also at our meetings in North America as well. He's an experienced professional in finance, financial performance management field, former practitioner as well, with FP&A experience, strong finance and information system knowledge. And he's responsible for creating compelling and differentiated positioning reflected in the content and assets. And at the moment, he's driving the launch of the process of SAP's planning, budgeting, and forecasting solution. Pras, you are going to talk today about how technology can help. Pras, you're welcome.
Thanks for having me here, Larissa.
Thank you. And finally, we have also our panelists from Japan, Shintara Ajita, Manager Finance and Accounting at Michael Page. 10 years of recruitment experience working in Japan and Australia. His focus on senior level positions, including CFO, FD, Head of Finance. So his specialization in finance and accounting brings a lot of experience on what is happening in FP&A across Asia. And actually, especially for this meeting, Shinta collected information from all our chapters in Asia. So it would be about the latest trends and developments in FP&A recruitment in Asia. Shinta, you're welcome.
Thanks, Larissa. Happy to be here.
Thank you, everyone. Now you can switch off your cameras because I have just a few slides. My experience is in FP&A as well. I'm a former practitioner, and at the moment, I'm managing FP&A Trends Group. Those are 27 cities and 16 countries, 4 continents where we have physical chapters. You can see in red those chapters in Asia that we have our physical meetings, and we are going to restart next year. We also started the best practice workshops and FP&A consultancy as well at FP&A Trends Group. About this webinar, it would be very practical experience for you. So 90 minutes webinar. Your participation is welcome. We will have 4 polling questions. There will be interactive Q&A session, and you can start to send your questions straight away. Use chat box, please. Networking is important, so you can connect or follow speakers on LinkedIn. Presentation is available in handouts, but we will send you the recording and presentation after the meeting. And also, the survey after the meeting will bring us a lot of information how we can improve. So please do this. We would like to say thank you so much to our global technology sponsor, SAP, one of the world's leading providers of FP&A solutions. Thank you so much to our recruitment partner, Michael Page, one of the world's leading professional recruitment consultancies. Let us move on. So the subject of ZBB is quite wide. 90 minutes, obviously not enough, but we will try our best to give you quite a wide and interesting picture. So those are 6 facets that we are going to touch today. We will be talking about learnings, ZBB as a management systems, change management, case study, technology, and recruitment. Let me start from my quick presentation. As you know, zero-based budgeting, it's quite an old concept. It's already more than 50 years old. And this is the quote from Jimmy Carter at the time of his presidential promise in 1976. So he said that if I'm elected president, I'm going to institute zero-based budgeting, which access every program every year and eliminates those programs that are obsolete. So definitely from the introduction of zero-based budgeting in 17th, it was such a popular concept, not only in businesses, but also in government organizations as well. But what is interesting that until I would say year 2010, the focus of ZBB was mostly on cost management. But now if you look at zero-based budgeting, there are many different aspects. People started to talk about zero-based decision making. They're talking about zero-based supply chain and so on so far. especially after COVID situation. We are talking about zero-based FP&A, and I will explain to you what I mean. So it's not only about cost. Practically every aspect of our planning and forecasting should be looked at zero-based at the moment. And maybe this is the reason why it's such an interesting and popular subject. I would like to give you some information, some details. So why is zero-based budgeting so popular? At the moment, over 300 global companies currently use ZBB. More than 90% use this mostly for cost reduction. 280 million per year, this is average cost saving. And normally, this is per McKinsey, they say that the saving cost reduction could be from 10% to 25%. And reduction is often very quick, it's within 6 months. But then let us look at the results of those cost-cutting exercises. There are some concerns with zero-based budgeting because from those 238 companies that announced cost reduction programs between 2003 and 2014, only 26% were able to sustain the reduction for 4 years. Only 17% were able to grow. The latest case study from Kraft Heinz, you know that they started this journey in year 2015, and actually Tom was part of this journey. But in year 2019, the company's share price dropped by 29% in only 1 day. And the company announced that they continue to use ZBB and they are going to partially fund their initiatives. But the reality is that at the moment you would see different information about this case study, that probably it wasn't too balanced and a lot of high pressure and quite an anxious environment as well. So the conclusion is, what is new in ZBB? ZBB is not cost-cutting exercise. This is looking at every line of your planning process, P&L, balance sheet, and cash flow from the point of view of value. So it's applied not only to cost. This is the method to identify key value drivers, and that is why it's so much connected with our driver-based planning. It's rethinking our traditional budgeting process. This is the way to move on from all of those traditional budgeting problems. And of course, it's about improving business partnering because a lot of collaboration, a lot of business partnering, and modern technology makes it very, very easy. Let us move on. Let us look at first presentation from our panel, ZBB as a management system and culture. Tom, you're welcome to join me. And we are starting your presentation. So Tom, Portfolio Finance Director at Capital, you're welcome.
Thank you, Larissa. Hi, everyone. Thanks for kind of having me today and share some of my experiences. So most of my experience are based on the ZBB implementation role I had in Kraft Heinz. The slide earlier shared by Larissa is not really my slide, but I'll give you a bit my perspective on some of those. So if you go on the next slide, Larissa. Okay, so I think the first thing to address is kind of to the core of zero-based budgeting. So as the name says, everyone kind of thinks of it as it's around budgeting and you have to start from scratch, which of course is true, but actually ZBB is much more than that. I think you need to look at zero-based budgeting as a management system and really a culture. And what is included in that culture? The first thing is to be quite focused on costs and have a granular visibility of it. Not kind of a once-off that says we do a zero-based budget once every couple of years, but actually as an ongoing management system. And in line with that, you need to have ambitious targets and a governance system and a management system that kind of keeps the focus on that to really have sustained benefits over a longer time. Because as Larissa mentioned, linked to the studies that she referred to, it's hard to keep up the pace. So everyone starts with good intentions and ultimately starts off well, but then it's hard to kind of make it a long-lasting success. It means in zero-based budgeting, if you're serious about it, you need to make it a key part of your performance systems, and also you need to make sure it applies to everyone. So often cost cutting, you kind of cut a lot at the basis, but not necessarily at the top. And I think you need to look at the organization in full. Next slide, please. Just put on my timers. So if you're thinking about implementing zero-based budgeting, you need to start with some of the basics. And two of the key basics are standardization and visibility of costs. So most organizations that don't have ZBB have kind of issues that are on the left of this slide, where it's sometimes very hard to get a view on how much are we actually spending on travel, on people, on property, etc. across the globe for a multinational. And if you think about, for example, the COVID situation last year, everyone was very much focused on preserving cash. But imagine the kind of extra work that finance and many companies had to do to kind of create those summaries of how much do we actually spend and how much can we save. With zero-based budgeting implemented properly, you can get that on literally with a click on the mouse. So the two key things are standardization. So what does that mean? We get to group all the costs as per their nature and as per their driver, with clear definition that you enforce globally. So that if you look at a report from France and one from Australia, they follow the same definitions. And we need to have visibility, and visibility you cannot have by lots of Excel files and download it and manipulate it. You need to have a real life view from the ledgers, and very important is to reconcile to the P&L, right? Because often you have people saying, oh, our cost out is X, and if you look at the P&L, you don't really see it, because there's also a lot of cost in, so you need to make sure you capture both. Next slide. The next thing to consider is the organizational setup, and that's all about this governance and how to create a culture of costs focus. And one of the key things is this kind of dual responsibility for every dollar spent that you have. So in most organizations, you would have a sales director or a marketing director, and they would have a people budget, they would have a travel budget, they would have a services budget, consultancy budget, etc. And they're being held to that, or being held to that. And if they overspend in travel, they can save it on people and the other way around, and everyone's happy at the end of the year. Now, that's not the case in zero-based budgeting, because basically what you do is, once you have a clear view of what you spend per package, you assign a package owner, and that package owner is not interested about other packages, only about their package across the board. So if the marketing or sales director overspends on travel, they may cover it with their people budget, but the package owner who is only responsible for travel will say, hang on a minute, you're overspending versus my budget. So you create this kind of tension in the system where every spend is reviewed twice, which naturally drives down the cost if you set the targets right. A couple of other things that you need to think about is who spends money. I mean, when we started in Heinz, we had thousands of people who would raise POs and do purchase requests, etc., which we brought down to dozens, really, maybe a couple of hundreds maximum across the globe. We have dedicated ZBB teams in every kind of business unit and in every region, and in headquarters. It's a key focus of all the financial reviews. If you have all the visibility, you need to make sure that people are held to account, and it needs to become a key part of your management routines. One of an example was that we had a quarterly review with the CEO of the company. So imagine the CEO of the company looking at, I don't know, your travel or services or consultancy package in a country that is fairly kind of small, far away from headquarters. So it kind of shows the importance that was given to that. And also important is that at the same time as driving those savings and those behaviors, you communicate about best practices, not only best practices, how to save money, but also kind of people that went above and beyond and did something ingenious that you can share across, so you have a bit of a positive spin on something that is essentially quite focused on efficiencies. Next slide. So why would you do ZBB? So I think ZBB is a very powerful tool to get a visibility on your costs and your cost drivers. So imagine if you sit in a headquarter in a business unit, and you can immediately see how much do you spend versus your budget versus last year, package by sub-package, by business unit. I mean, that's quite strong to find areas where there are efficiencies or where there is opportunity. It also helps with transparency. You don't have all these miscellaneous accounts where you're not really sure what goes in and out. So it can help in terms of kind of risk and compliance and monitoring of spend and investment. Of course, if you know kind of where we spend money and you can track everything live, it helps you to kind of choose where to invest and track the spend on that. Obviously, you can drive cost savings, and one of the kind of more intangible benefits, but is quite powerful, is that everyone in the organization knows their budget, because they have to explain it and kind of work for it to obtain it in the first place. So in many organizations, including the one I'm in now, I think if you ask people what is your budget from last month in terms of costs, few managers outside of finance would know that exactly. You won't have that with ZBB. And in terms of some of the results, I mean, the saving potential is enormous. So I mean, in Heinz, we had some packages over 50–60% reduction without really touching on kind of the core of the operation in many ways. And it can have a big impact on profit margin. I mean, look at organizations like AB InBev versus kind of Heineken, or I mean, or on Heinz versus a Unilever, etc. In terms of profit margins, I'm not talking about top line, but in terms of profit margins, significantly higher, and ZBB is a key element of that. And of course, I mean, if you do a lot of savings, you can choose where to spend it, right? So you can either flow it to the bottom line, you can invest it in new products, or invest it in marketing, etc. And you can invest in your people by salaries, but mainly in above market bonuses if you meet targets. Next slide. So I think if you kind of take a step back and think of zero-based budgeting and why you would do it, and kind of what are the things to be careful or to think about. First thing, it's a very powerful tool, and it can bring a culture shift that kind of endures in the organization. So definitely worth kind of thinking about that. But it needs to be a very conscious decision. I mean, there's many of these initiatives kind of die a death or fail to deliver long term because they're not sustained and not well thought through. They don't have the right executive focus. We do a bit of it, but not everything. It's not supported in the right way in terms of resources, tools, etc., or people. So I think it needs to fit in a wider kind of company focus, because you can't only focus on cost in a company, and you have to have that focus on top line. I mean, to what Larissa kind of mentioned earlier, I think the problems that Kraft Heinz has is only a little bit of ZBB. The reality is there's plenty of challenges inherent in their categories, and their categories are declining, and the innovation probably didn't keep up with that. So I think that's probably a bigger driver than ZBB, but of course a little bit harder as a headline for an article. Now, looking forward, I think there's plenty to be excited about in ZBB, because I'm talking of experience of a couple of years ago, which was kind of with technology is not at the level that it is now, and I think I'm quite excited about one, kind of the more tools available that are more integrated with your core systems, which gives you a lot of opportunity for dashboarding and kind of further data and analytics, but also in terms of kind of benchmarking, because as an organization you should benchmark between business units, but you should also try to benchmark outside, right? I mean, how much do we spend on property versus a competitor, for example, and are we better or lower, and why? And I think as more and more companies kind of use these shared platforms, I think there will be some opportunity for almost big data applications whereby you can compare yourself with other companies, which should give us quite a bit of insight on where we can improve further. So a lot to be excited about. Okay, I think that's probably the end of mine. I think Larissa, so some of the colleagues will kind of shed their light on some of these topics. Is that right?
Oh, fantastic presentation. Thank you so much. I would like to invite Nicholas and Vincent to join Tom just for quick commentaries. So Vincent, if you can join us as well. From my side, I would say that Tom, it's quite a powerful reminder about standardization and visibility that are the key elements of a successful ZBB program. And of course, that it should be value adding. It's about reinvestments and how to reinvest. Thank you, Tom. I would like to ask Vincent to give a quick commentary on this presentation.
So I think Tom has clearly told us the idea, right? So ZBB clearly is not just a tool to cut costs. Clearly it's not. So there are a lot of strategic reasons why ZBB should be done. But I also particularly like the way Tom talked about the support needed, how to make ZBB executable and successful. So it's not like, just do it and it can be done. So I think truly Tom has illustrated that pretty well.
Thank you, Vincent. Nicholas, your commentary, please.
Yes, thanks, Tom, for the presentation. Indeed, what I find really interesting is that you insist on the potential leverage that ZBB can bring into the organization. And I'm really pleased you do so, because it's definitely kind of fueling the interest for typical examples that I will show later on how the leverage can be articulated on headcount, on saving, on lead time, and so on and so forth. So it was very, very helpful in the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicholas. Thank you, Tom. This is the timing now for the first polling question. And what we would like to hear from you, we would like to understand what is your experience in ZBB. I'm launching the first polling question. And please, can you start voting as soon as you see it? Please choose one of the following options. How would you describe your current experience with ZBB? Is it non-existent? Is it theoretical? Is it successful practical experience? Or is it unsuccessful practical experience? Please continue to vote. Just choose one of those. What is your experience? The first one, non-existent, you don't have any experience at all, or you have theoretical experience, or you already implemented and was successful, or it's unsuccessful practical experience. Please continue to vote, just a few seconds. And I'm closing the poll, and I'm sharing these results with everyone. Just a few seconds. Okay, so those are the results. Very interesting to see how what's happening in Asia with ZBB. Tom, can you comment on this? You can see that 36% of people don't have any experience with ZBB, and 26 have theoretical experience, 27 successful practical experience, which is great, and 11 unsuccessful one. So what would be your quick commentary?
Well, I would say it's quite, it shows there's a lot of opportunity out there to potentially apply some, if not all, of the principles to some of the organizations. So I think for the people who are kind of have not dealt with it, I think it's something worth considering, you know, if it's something that would work for your industry organization. And I'm quite good to see 27% has successful practical experience, because it is not an easy thing to implement well. So I'm quite strengthened by, or quite encouraged by having a much higher percentage of successful versus unsuccessful.
Absolutely. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, everyone, for your commentaries. And we are moving on. The next presentation is about team's readiness for ZBB, how to manage the change. We all know that it's a huge cultural shock to the team. And I would like to invite Vincent to come and join us. Vincent, please join us. And the floor is yours.
Absolutely. Thanks, Larissa. So today we are looking at ZBB, and clearly, like what Thomas just mentioned, it is the best time to start implementing this purely because of the pandemic. So if you look at many of the companies, including mine, for example, right? So many of us like to look at what happened last year, 5 years ago, and basically do an incremental. Is either you grow or you cut costs, right? So that has changed quite a bit due to the pandemic, and clearly due to the many COVID situation, which resulted in more consequences. And many of the assumptions are no longer valid. But if we continue to use incremental, we may miss out lots of opportunities and ability of the company. So in my next slide, you can see that I took a case study, and this is a real case study of my company, my previous company, where this is a Singapore-listed company, OEM for electronic goods, about 1.4 billion. Not that big, but sufficient size for ZBB implementation. In my team, I have about 127 employees, plus me 128, and most of them are like really long serving, like 20 years as an average. And these people, they have been working on budget for the past like 20 times, and every year one time, so 20 times, and they know the process quite well, and they may not be very interested in ZBB. So in my team, right, so when I became the group CFO, I wanted to implement ZBB purely for the reason that Tom mentioned, and I mentioned, that lots of assumptions have changed, and then this is the good thing, and then we need to move. But the team are not very excited, and therefore that's the time where I was thinking, how do we implement? The first step always is to size up the team. interest. So in my team, for example, about 10% are really interested, 10% are the change agents, 10% are really understanding during my speech and truly understanding the benefit of ZBB. 70% are about neutral. They are like, kind of heard before, heard what Vincent say, and then let's see what happens. And 20% are basically the naysayers. They are like negative, against ZBB, potentially prior experience. So many of the team members, they came to me and said, Vincent, how do you implement, right? So I split the team to these 3 groups, and then they asked me, which group do we focus on? Do we put in our effort and put in our time and resources and rewards? So in the next slide, you can see that some team actually came to me and say, Vincent, is it the last group? Is it like the 20% naysayers? Because if you can convince this group, you can convince everyone. The naysayers say yes, it's like, you can convince everyone, your points are so strong. My response to them is absolutely not. Please do not spend any time at all to this group. This is like a black hole. They will say no matter what happens. So my suggestion is not to spend any time at this group after sizing up. The next slide will show, is it the majority? Is it like the 70%? So when my team asked me this, because they have good reason, because this is the majority. If you can convince the 70%, you basically have like the whole team. The chance of success is secure. But I told my team, no, this group is like the look and see group. It's like what's in need for me group. This group is successful, is supporting you if the project is successful and the project is generating benefit. But ZBB, as many of us know, it's not always rainbow sunshine. So it is suitable for the company, but sometimes at some business unit, at some countries, may not be relevant, may not be useful. And therefore, it's like if we focus a lot and say this will be successful, at the time where we face the first failure, this group of people are the one that will say, maybe that's not the right way. So my suggestion again is not to focus on this group, but of course the next page will show that it is the change agents. So obviously, everyone knows change agents is the best group to focus on, to put in all our effort, our time, our rewards. But my team asked me, Vincent, it's 10%. So I have 128, 227 staff, so it's about 12%. 12%, how do you manage ZBB implementation at 12%? I think that is still possible. So 10% through my experience is all that we need to move forward, provided that this 10% has the sufficient key staff and understand the team dynamics. So this is the team dynamics of my team. In the next slide, you can see that although I size up the 3 groups, although I have like focused all my energy, effort, and time and reward to the 10%, where that means I give them the reward, I show small successes, I make sure that the success of the 10% is able to influence the success of the 70%. That means make the 70% see that if you do the same, you get the success. And when they actually do, they get the success. Communication is something that I didn't do well. So in this case study, I like to be very frank with everyone, right? So a lot of things are successful. Communication was not what I was particularly successful about. Key staff was not convinced. And I like to share with you, right? So the next slide states the reason why, besides sizing up the team, communication could be the second most important item. And the reason why my ZBB implementation in my previous company didn't work was the illusion that I have done the communication. So this is very practical. Many of us think that one speech done, everyone understand that's the 10%. So even the 10%, right, needs a very detailed communication on the task ahead and of course on the stakeholder management side. So in the next slide, I just very quickly summarize the case study that I've done. Communication to all is very key. Sizing up the team dynamics into 3 groups. Many experience tells me 3 is around there. So if you just do a 3, you may see 10, 15% and then 70 or 60%, and then the naysayers usually about 20%. Focus on the change agents, focus on the 10% or the change. It could be 15 if you're lucky, I'm not sure, but focus on the 10 or 15% and communicate the success of the change agent to the rest of the team. I didn't do step 4 very well, and therefore, in my personal opinion, I think, ladies and gentlemen, please do not take my mistake. In my personal opinion, if we do 1, 2, 3, 4, we have a much higher chance of implementation success for ZBB. And the 10%, sometimes people continue to come to me and say, Vincent, are you sure it's still enough? I have done many times where it is successful. This was not, but I've done many times that it's successful. 10% is your tool, is your weapon to make sure that the 70% follows. And if you are going to have some takeaway from my presentation or my experience, my field experience today, it will be size up, communicate, and focus on the 10%. So with this, ladies and gentlemen, I truly believe that ZBB is very relevant in this stage of pandemic. Let's learn from my mistake. Thanks, Larissa.
Thank you so much, Vincent. I would like to invite Tom and Pras to come and join us. In the meanwhile, it's an excellent reminder, Vincent, about importance of change management. Excellent practical information from my side. I would say that sometimes the percentage of change agents can change depending on situation in the company. My personal experience, when we started to implement ZBB at the time when company went through huge restructure, and we communicated this to everyone that if we wouldn't find the fat in the budget, there would be people who would go, and we don't want this to happen quickly. There were a lot of change agents that wanted to understand what are the drivers of the cost. And I would say that we save a lot of employees in the company as the result of this exercise. I would like to ask Tom to comment on this presentation. Tom, please.
Thanks, Vincent, for sharing. I think it just illustrates with the real practical example that you need to think well on your implementation. Think well on kind of the structure you want to put in, the systems you want to put in, but definitely on the people. Because implementing zero-based budgeting is often not a very fun exercise. You have the people kind of enjoying change and transformation, but the majority of people find it very intrusive, and I think it's key to get them on board to really drive the benefits and make them sustainable, right? I think that should be the focus if you start. What do we want to achieve and how do we make it sustainable? And having a good think about the people dynamics and your change agents and how you're going to bring the message, how you're going to enforce the message and make it a more positive story, I think is absolutely crucial.
Thank you, Tom. Pras, your commentary, please.
Yeah, a great presentation, Vincent. I think the one thing that we can all take away from this is the approach you took. I think common sense for some people might have been to focus on the 20% that were completely against this or those that were neutral, but the fact that you focused on the 10% that were really champions and had them really be multipliers to their organization and focus on them as change agents and such, highlights success. And I think that was a fantastic approach that we can all learn from.
Excellent. Thank you, Pras. Thank you, everyone. And Vincent, thank you for excellent presentation. This is the timing for the second polling question, and everyone is welcome to participate. We would like to understand what is the percentage of change agents for ZBB in your organization. Just your guess. We understand that it's quite subjective, but how do you feel? So what percentage of ZBB change agents, supporters, do you have in your organization? Select one of the following and please vote as soon as you see it. Less than 10%, from 10 to 40%, from 41 to 70, or more than 70%. Please, can you continue to vote? Just a few seconds. Just choose one of those. Less than 10%, 10 to 40, 41 to 70, more than 70%. Please continue to vote. Just a few seconds. And we are closing the poll and we are sharing the results with everyone. So those are the results. And Vincent, what do you think about this? So 60% have less than 10% of agents.
So, you know, I can only say that the participants today are all very honest, very, very honest. So, you know, 10% is already, I was quite lucky. So 10% is already a very successful. If we have less than 10%, you are normal. So many people like what Tom just mentioned, right? So not many people like ZBB, but my message is that even with 10%, focus on the change agent is better than focusing on the naysayers or those that are look and see. So I think this is a bit surprising, but I think the team are very honest. Larissa.
Absolutely. And only 2% have more than 70%, you know, 5%, 41 to 70, and from 10 to 40, 33%. I'm hiding the results and we are moving on. Thank you so much for your votes, everyone. So the next facet of our today's meeting, let us look at another practical example, practical case study, implementation of ZBB in Emirates in Malaysia. And we have Nicholas Perrin, who is joining us today to share his experience. Nicholas, you're welcome.
Thank you, Larissa. Just to as a small introduction, this example business case relates to my previous position, but I must tell you that I'm continuing using ZBB actually for the budget 22 on R&D expense. I have asked the team and I tried to train the team to do a ZBB exercise, and I will see the result of everything next Tuesday. So it's relates, it's resonate, it's extremely active, and I'm still using it, even if this experience relates to my previous position. So next, please. This experience, so the way in Imeris, it's within the DNA of the company, the way we work with ZBB is a truly bottom-up exercise. So most of the time, the business case you've seen or you experience is a top-down approach, but here it's really a bottom-up exercise. It's a question and ask for help from the local management in order to reach certain objective. They ask for help, and then we go and do a ZBB exercise. And in that respect, as the CFO of the division, I was the one to send the team and make sure that it was properly addressed. So this case is related to Malaysia, and Malaysia, for your information, in calcium carbonate in mining was the biggest plant for Imeris. And it's in the geographical area where you have the highest calcium carbonate available for Asia. It's doing extraction, processing, and expedition of calcium carbonate, which is marble, basically, from India to Japan. There are more than 100 employees working there, and there were two objectives requested from the management. One was increasing the output with the current system they had, and also to improve gross margin. So if we move on, a prerequisite, as it was mentioned previously in the previous presentation, is definitely to have someone dedicated. And as it was a bottom-up exercise, we had to have someone dedicated locally. Okay, of course, the group, I mean myself, we were sending people, one person from finance and one person from production, in order to bring some expertise on ZBB processes and so on and so forth, and also to have a neutral, really neutral opinion on that. But we needed, of course, local people really motivated, competent. If they were not, we were providing training. We were ready also to address all the change issue, because after a ZBB, when comes the time of implementation, as we have seen previously, we have to address a change issue. Of course, as a basis and as a cornerstone, the local controller, finance, and the local HR were extremely important in the process. And finally, because we were sending people from other divisions, but also from people from the other area, either on finance or production, it was a lot of based on experience sharing in order to reach the definite goal of increasing the output and also increasing the profit. So we've done the basic exercise. So it's basically an audit. What do we need to achieve a certain quantity, and what do we have today? And when you do that, when you do this exercise, you have a bridging between the situation as is versus the to be in the ZBB case. Okay. Here, and it shows the next slide, we have 4 different areas that were identified. And I remind you, it's not only profit increase here, it was also, and mainly I would say, the primary objective, it was also to increase the output given the production facilities without investment. So we identified 4 areas. The maintenance was extremely poor. We were facing a lot of breakdown of machines, so preventing us from increasing production. Quality and process, we were not able to improve continuous improvement and to relate from feedback from customers. Purchasing and supply chain, as the plant was about to deliver across Asia, and you know very well Asia, it's extremely wide in terms of distance. We needed to make sure that it was properly addressed also. And finally, and overall, the layout, the people organization was also identified as a key, as a weakness, I would say, in order to go and bridge toward the ZBB optimization of output and profit. So next, I will show you it's a very down-to-earth approach. But on the next slide, you'll see what was targeting after the ZBB exercise with local management and our experts. So we have identified that the plant with the given production tools, the given mining area, we were able to have only 5 days lead time from the time you first dig the rock up to the time it's in the boat toward the customer. So today the ASIS was 8, and we set up a first milestone in 2017 in the budget, by the way, of 6 days of lead times. So you can see the increase is massive. It's more than 25% increase of reduction of lead time, so increase in capacity, because there were no limitation given the ore, given the resources. Headcount reduction also, it was a part of increasing profits, doing more with less, basically here. The ZBB showed us a target of 122. We were not that aggressive in the first milestone we set up. We set up a plan of 141 from 152. The reduction percentage showed by the exercise of ZBB was a 20% cost reduction for better output. So it was very important here. And we set up a plan, the first step at 7%, allowing us time for implementation and building the time for implementation of the ZBB target into the plan. And overall, we had a 3% year-on-year labor cost reduction in the plan. So finally, and to be really down to earth, what were the actions taken? So in the next slide, you'll see several actions that were taken in order to improve the output. Remember, this was the first objective, and of course, to improve the profitability in the meantime, because with less resources, you produce more. The equation is fairly easy in your mind, I guess. We have, of course, a better profitability. So what we have identified, for instance, and it's really down to earth, I would say, action, we have identified there were more than 30% of the workforce that they were not able to read. And not neither written, but not able to read. So what we did, we hired our local teachers to teach how to read. Why? Because when it comes the time to apply processes and to apply instruction, it's impossible to have someone giving instruction behind every single workers. You have in the workshops and so on and so forth, you have proper instruction that are shown to everyone. And therefore, by teaching people how to read, we are able to increase the skill of the operator. And in the meantime, and you can see that, it was possible to improve the maintenance reactivity and to be much more reactive and even more proactive, just instead of doing the fireman work. And the same in terms of quality, much more reactive and even more proactive with people able to read the instruction. And not to take too long, because it's pretty obvious and written down there. We were also creating some continuous improvement tools, putting in place continuous improvement tools in order to reach the ZBB. Because the different steps we identified, with some of them that were put into the budget, but the different steps identified, we needed a clear direction. And in order to have this clear direction, we hired a performance department. We made sure that we have resources allocated for continuous improvements, not to lose the sight of the target that the ZBB was giving to us. So given all those action, and it's really down to earth action, we ended up with a proper and a new organization chart and a new organization of each department on the 4 areas we have discussed. That's it for me. Thank you for your attention, and I'll be pleased to receive some feedback from the teammates.
Excellent practical experience, Nicholas. Thank you for sharing. I would like to ask Tom and Vincent to come and join us. In the meanwhile, I would like to read one of the commentaries from our participants. Excellent presentation, thank you. It looks like ZBB can decrease employee morale and motivation, especially with Japanese employees, as well as high-performing executives. So customize ZBB for each market, as well as micro level. Probably this is the way to go. And looking at your presentation, how in Malaysia some people even needed lessons for reading, it definitely should be customized for the market. Thank you, Nicholas. Fantastic presentation. Tom, your quick commentary, please.
Yeah, I think thanks, Nicholas, for sharing. I think what I really like is the comprehensive nature of how they approach it, right? Setting clear standards, getting buy-in from the team, getting dedicated teams, and also doing taking actions to empower teams. So it's not just someone shouting from the tower, but it's something that really comes from bottom up. And I think that's quite key, because the solutions to most problems are known in the organization, right? Just maybe not at the right level. So it's about kind of how do you extract that. I think that's quite a good example that Nicholas gave. And in terms of kind of the comment you just raised, Larissa, I think that's key, right? You need to implement something that works for your organization, cultural difference, but also different industries, right? I mean, in a consumer goods and a mining company, this may work for a financial services firm, which sometimes you need to travel to make big deals and gain a lot of extra profit. That will be silly to save on travel because it's above your ZBB budget. So I think you need to kind of think how it applies to your own company and make sure you do something that makes sense.
Thank you so much, Tom. Vincent, your commentary, please.
So I think Nicholas clearly understands the ZBB implementation quite well, and clearly one of the items that he focused a lot is to have the local team. So I think that is absolutely appropriate and very, very necessary. In fact, just now one of the attendees said the same thing. It should be accustomed to the local context. And Nicholas talked about having both the HR and controller, working local HR and controller working together. I think that is clearly the one of the key prerequisite and success factor, very tying to what I was sharing just now. But with a very targeted and focused way, the success is much higher. So good one, Nicholas.
Thank you for your commentaries. Nicholas, once again, thank you for excellent presentation. Now we would like to hear from you, our participants. And we would like to hear what is, in your view, the biggest benefit of zero-based budgeting. So please choose from one of those options and please participate. Yeah. In your view, what is the most significant benefit of the ZBB process? The first one, the first option, it removes fat from the budget. So it's decreased the cost. It helps with flexible planning process. This is the second option. It helps to move away from traditional budgeting culture. I don't think it has any benefits. So please continue to vote. Just a few seconds. Once again, it removes fat from the budget. It helps with flexible planning process. It helps to move away from traditional budgeting culture. I don't think it has any benefits. More than 50% of you voted. Just a few seconds. I'm closing the poll and I'm sharing the results with everyone. Yeah. So the majority of you agree that it removes fat from the budget. So this is the method for cost cutting. 28% of you say that it helps with the flexible planning process. 22% of you think that it helps to move away from traditional budgeting culture. And 3% of you say no benefits at all. So, Nicholas, your quick commentary, please.
Well, yeah, so nearly half of the team here is having the traditional approach of ZBB, as you've shown rightly, Larissa, from the quote from the US president. Yes, indeed, the first and the way it has been created was to address this fat, this cost, extra cost from any budget. But I'm glad also to see that nearly one third understand the flexible planning process that could be behind. For my example in Malaysia, the flexibility allows us to have a better output, so better level of sales and so on and so forth. So it's nice to see that also in the panel. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your commentary. And thank you everyone for sharing your votes with us. I'm hiding the result and we are moving on. ZBB technology enablers. Pras, I would like to ask you to join us. And while Pras is joining us to talk about ZBB technology enablers, Pras, you probably remember from our meetings that we had in North America, when we asked people what is the biggest problem with ZBB, practically everywhere in the world, not only in North America, people always said it's time consuming, it's very expensive, it's so on so far. Obviously, technology changing all of this. You're welcome to share with us how.
Great, thank you so much, Larissa. And thank you everyone for having me here. So I'd like to spend some time now talking about how technology can help facilitate the zero-based budgeting process to make it easier and more collaborative across the board. So as we move on, one thing I'd like to point out is that ZBB can be accelerated through technology. Through the course of today's presentation, we found that various themes have come across through the presenters, such as ZBB is better facilitated through collaboration and communication, as well as that whether it be supported by IT solutions, and finally having live and access to real data. But to get past that point, we have to accept some of the challenges that organizations have at this time. For example, 79, based on some of the surveys we've done with many of you through our FP&A Trends Survey 2021, as well as a Data 2020 survey that we did at SAP, we found that 79% of you report deficiencies in their access to high quality data. So we have to overcome this challenge. As well, only 47% of organizations have integrated planning systems where the different planners across the board are able to communicate with one another. And finally, one that's I know will grow because we are all in finance and recognize the benefits of it. Only 6% of organizations are currently using AI and machine learning, and only 14% are planning to use it within the next 6 months, and only 37% in the next few years, which means many organizations will be at a huge competitive disadvantage. And I'll explain a little bit later on how this will help facilitate ZBB as well. So let's continue. So what are some of the key drivers in helping accelerate ZBB? The first thing, in my opinion, is planning integrated with ERP and data warehouse. Now, we heard, for example, from Tom talk earlier about how having access to live data and the relevant drivers and such makes for a more complete ZBB process. So when you have an organization where your financial management system is complete and synchronized, such as your planning tool, your budgeting tool, your forecasting tool, is completely in real time integrated with your ERP and data warehouse where all your information resides, that means that you as a planner and you as a practitioner exercising ZBB are able to work with the most relevant data. And what does this lead to? This leads to the fact that you have better accuracy. You have better accuracy because you're not dealing with data that's contained in spreadsheets, data that's obsolete, data that's effectively irrelevant. Rather, you have access to the most relevant cost drivers and most relevant expense trends or whatnot, so you're able to make better ZBB related decisions. Finally, you're also able to build better up plans that are more accurate, plans that the organization can trust, especially if you're about to embark on a ZBB exercise at this point in time for the first time. You have to have access to the information that is credible, that everyone can have confidence in. Let's continue. The other piece is that you have to have modern planning features and functions. Now, people often ask me, Praz, who is your biggest competitor? And without naming vendors, our biggest competitor when it comes to planning, budgeting, and forecasting is still Microsoft Excel, because many people and many organizations are still stuck in a world, and I'd say almost 48 to 50% of you, where Excel is your primary budgeting and forecasting tool. But while Excel has its benefits and its strengths in terms of modeling, there's a lot of modern, whether that we might planning and analysis 2.0 functions that Excel doesn't have at this point in time. We've heard today that communication is absolutely key when it comes to zero-based budgeting. Modern planning solutions have collaboration built in the context of plans. This means that you can basically, as you make ZBB decisions, as you question trends, as you collaborate amongst things, you can do that in the context of your plans, basically built right into your planning solution. This can be done through many facets. Many organizations are using tools such as Teams or Slack right now to collaborate. But taking it a step beyond that, collaboration is right now built into the planning tools. So there's many planning solutions out there where effectively you can click on a data cell, click on a report, click on a dashboard, click on anything that is object-oriented within the context of your budgeting and forecasting tools, and share that amongst a group, as you might do with tools such as WhatsApp or whatnot. And within that group, question, gain confidence, and really discover what's happening. The other part is using machine learning and AI to uncover hidden insights. Now, why is this important? The idea is that with ZBB, you're really building your budget and forecast ground up, putting aside previous trends. But with machine learning and AI, you might be able to effectively combine the human intelligence of what you're building with ZBB, along with the historical trends that have happened in the past, and run a machine learning and AI-based algorithm to really uncover insights that might not be available to the human eye. And finally, with this ZBB exercise that you might embark on, you might be able to effectively do simulations and scenario planning. Understand based on the forecast that you've created, or the budget and the plan that you've created based on a ZBB process, what the impact of that is when you run various simulations in terms of best case, worst case, upside, downside, and the ability to do this many, many times over and over again. So let's continue. Finally, I think the most important piece of ZBB is really having a zero-based budgeting process powered by FP&A, extended planning analysis. We've talked many times through FP&A trends about the process of FP&A, but to sum it up, FP&A is a process which really understands and exemplifies the fact that everybody plans, not just us in finance. Marketing is planning their campaigns and their promotions for next year based on sales targets or sales, what sales wants to deliver upon. But sales is building their plans and their targets based on potentially what operations can deliver for them to sell. And they're also communicating to operations what they want to sell. So operations and the supply chain group can effectively figure out an S&OP plan. IT might, based on all of these activities and hiring plans and whatnot, create new capital spends and whatnot. And HR, based on the requirements of sales and the supply chains and the operations people, look at all of this and figure out what kind of headcount plan they need for next year. So again, you see the strategic alignment required with all departments for just FP&A. So let's create that, take it a step beyond and say that if we go on a ZBB process, a zero-based budgeting process, where we're starting from a bottom up and creating a zero-based budgeting awareness, as has been pointed out, communication is key. This has been pointed out by all the various practitioners you've heard from that have talked about how they've created a ZBB process in organizations in a successful manner. So in order to create that, we need alignment with across all departments. And with an FP&A process powered during ZBB, you're able to effectively create awareness, eliminate surprises across the board. And finally, make faster and more confident decisions. Because ultimately, when you've built in a zero-based budgeting process that is powered by FP&A, that is linked all the plans together so there's no surprises, and having technology facilitate this, whereby your marketing plans, your sales plans, your IT plans, your supply chain plans, and HR plans are all interconnected based on the dependencies that they have, and effectively roll into a financial plan, this creates a most successful version of a zero-based budgeting process. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Pras. A fantastic presentation about the role of technology. I would like to ask Nicholas and Shinta to join us for commentaries. But from my side, I would say, Pras, that thank you so much for reminding about connection of extended planning and analysis, XP&A, with zero-based budgeting. Definitely, it could be powered by technology, or all of this process. Thank you so much. And Nicholas, your first commentary, please.
Well, thank you, Pras, for your presentation. I'm always amazed to see how tools are evolving and are on top of everything now. My only comment would be that just should not prevent you to do some ZBB, even if you don't have the tool. I mean, don't expect the tool to be the solution at the beginning, at the first stage. For example, in Malaysia, we are running on very flat ERP program, very local ERP program. It was not possible to have such a dedicated tool, and it still works quite well with Excel. So it's extremely powerful when you have a mature organization able to handle and cope with processes behind those tools. But it should not prevent you, if you don't have those tools, to move and to try to do some ZBB. Thank you.
Start from small steps, Nicholas. Yeah, this is the message, definitely. And technology will help to accelerate this process. Thank you, Nicholas. Your quick commentaries, please.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Pras. I definitely saw the future of finance sort of planning, utilizing kind of modern technology. And I like the fact that actually it's a really powerful tool that any function in the business could easily access to and collaborate efficiently, timely, to make a quick decision in business. As a recruiter myself, I always need credible information. And if there's one platform can communicate with other platforms, sort of collecting all the data and so on, we definitely all could save our time and could act quickly with a better solution. So yeah, thank you very much for that.
Excellent. Thank you, Shinta, for your commentaries. Pras, thank you again for this excellent presentation. The next polling question, and I would like to ask participants to vote, and it's all about your technology and process for implementation of zero-based budgeting. So we would like to hear from you, how would you describe your current process? So let's say that if you decide today to implement the ZBB process, would your current systems and processes support it? Yes, they will. No, they will not. A simple process in Excel will be enough for us. So please continue to vote. Choose one of those three options. You have processes and technology. No, you don't have them, or you think that Excel is enough. Please continue to vote. Just a few seconds. And we are about to close this vote. Please continue to vote. Yes, I can see. We are closing the poll and we are sharing the results with everyone. 52% of you don't have any process or technology to support it. 19% of you, yes, you have technology and process. And 30% of you think that Excel is enough. Pras, do you agree with this?
I'm not surprised by the result. Obviously, that's why I'm here, because I'm here to advocate the fact that technology will make the ZBB process better. I think, for those organizations in the 52% that don't have it, at least it seems to me they recognize they need technology. And for those that think that a simple process, in Excel will be enough, I think my thoughts are on that it's probably enough for now, but as ZBB grows, it becomes, a cultural phenomenon, a cultural process. In order to have that ZBB phenomenon carry on through an organization, it'll have to mature beyond Excel. Maybe Excel, as was pointed out, is something to start with, but for us to, grow and really become a cultural norm, technology can better, push and advocate for the process.
Thank you, Pras. Thank you, everyone, for your votes. So let us move on. And the last session is about the latest trends in FP&A recruitment in Asia. Shinta is joining us from Japan, but obviously he collected information from many Asian countries from Michael Page colleagues. Shinta, you're welcome.
Thanks very much. Now, thank you, everyone. I was kind of happy to be here about the practical experience of my co-panelist. We can see that demand's definitely in here. Now, please allow me to give you the general recruitment trends I collected from different parts of Asia. The first slide is about FP&A hiring trends after post-COVID. A surge of demands in FP&A talents across the region. It's been a trend for more than a few years. A lot of companies across all industries in Asia Pacific are seeking for strong FP&A talents. Just like panelists spoke about ZBB, the FP&A function is more important these days to realign where the potential cost allocation and reduction, even where they're investing, is needed, adjusting with a new normal standard. So companies need to think from zero base to rebuild the business planning. High demands in FP&A talents with transformation project experience. After the post-COVID, a lot of companies are forced to shift their business strategies, and transformation project has been quite popular to reform their process, system, structure, and people. Particularly, it is more towards the usage of Power BI, Tableau, and Click, and so on. That kind of gives you in-depth insights to drive more storytelling behind numbers. Automation projects that ultimately aim at workflow efficiency improvement. Giving a little more example, report standardization projects continue to be on uptick in conjunction with the cost-saving projects to curb the residual effects of COVID-19. Lastly, on this slide, a financial modeling capability to support new business growth. FP&A play much more important roles these days, and they're not only providing data and analysis, but also working as a strategic partner to look at business holistically. Also, the number of clients begin to hire FP&A candidates with a strong financial modeling capability to support new potential business growth. So the key word for FP&A market trend is that change, adaptability, what strategy is required to redirect the course of action that business is needed. Okay, let's move on. Key skills that clients looking for in FP&A talent. What I talk about in this slide is mainly about soft skills, including mindset. What I want to emphasize in this page is companies are seeking for FP&A talents. They usually want to hear stories, challenges, and how they overcome those obstacles, collaborating with what level of people and which function. Now, it is the best way to assess their competencies, particularly on how they react to changes and how quickly they respond to those challenges. So the current business environment is changing dramatically. Companies are adjusting itself in a new format of business. So this requires FP&A people to be more closer to the business, understanding and foreseeing opportunities as well risk, but also requires excellent communication skills to be able to get the message delivered to mainly non-stakeholders, non-finance stakeholders, sorry. Now, moving to the final slide. So the challenges. So the first thing, industry specific. The quick transition or more commercially driven FP&A has resulted in more industry specific talent required for many organizations. Having the same industry knowledge and experience is huge advantage and shorten the learning curve so that they can perform very quickly as joining. This has resulted in more targeted search required. Small pool of candidates who have strong data analytics and transformation. In reality, there's no big candidate pool who has experience with that strong data analytics and transformation experience yet. However, I can definitely see there will be more candidates available in the future, especially after post-COVID. In other words, for those of you with a skill set, definitely is a huge advantage in the current recruitment market. Lastly, communication. As all the panelists mentioned about, communication is the key. It is the key for ZBB, but also generally speaking, FP&A always requires strong communication skills. Because simply is required to be business partnering with local, global stakeholders, counterparts, etc. I can assure you that almost all companies are hoping to hire someone with that skill set. But it's not simply about you being articulate things, convincing people, etc., but also about behavior such as taking initiatives and also how you build trustworthy relationship with other people around you. All of it, part of the communication skills. Now, that's pretty much all from my side. And obviously, if you like to know more about recruitment trends, we just launched our local global talent trends, but also launching new salary survey in a few months' time. So any questions, please reach out to me after this. Thank you.
Shinta, excellent presentation. And so happy to see that FP&A is a huge trend, not only here in Europe, but also in Asia and in Asia Pacific and many other countries. So no exceptions here. Thank you, Shinta. This is the timing for conclusions, and I would like to ask all the participants to come and join us. Please, can you join us for key takeaways? But I just wanted to remind everyone this 10 steps approach for successful implementation of ZBB. Obviously, there are more steps, more key performance indicators, but those are the main. So please remember the purpose, please remember about the sponsorship, identify your priorities in ZBB, interviews with people in order to understand the cost drivers and value drivers important. And of course, key drivers, this is the basis for your driver-based planning. We're talking about zero-based FP&A. Collaborate, use technology for collaboration, define your routine, whether it's one-off or day-to-day option. Visibility and accountability is very important. And again, technology is here to help. Monitor and adjust your process, automate warnings or outliers, and of course, plan from zero and those savings that you have reinvest. This is never-ending process, and with help of modern technology, we can do this quite often now. Okay, so key takeaways, please, from our panelists. And I would like to ask Tom to give this 30 seconds key takeaway. What you would like people to remember from this presentation, from this meeting?
I think the key takeaway is, I mean, we had a view on kind of the change management aspect of it, the setup aspect, the technology aspect, and the kind of focus on having a core team that can actually drive it and get those early adopters or people to really pull the project. And I think that's my key takeaway would be, or my key advice would be, plan before you start. It's not something that we should say, oh, there's a trend out there, let's also do it because everyone else does it. I think you need to have a good, almost a strategic discussion or strategic decision on whether this is right for you or not, and equally how it would be implemented. Because again, there's not a one rule fits all in this. And if you kind of skip over those processes by doing it quickly, right? The budget is kind of there for next year. Let's do quickly zero-based budgeting. I'm not sure that will really bring you much other than a lot of extra work and maybe some short-term benefits potentially. So I think you kind of need to have that wider plan, that wider strategy, and then put the resources and the investment behind it.
Thank you so much, Tom. Excellent insights. The next one is Vincent. Vincent, your 30 seconds.
So if we look at the sessions today, many speakers have already gone through the very important point. I just want to say that this is the best time to implement ZBB, mainly because of the pandemic, but also the consequences of the pandemic and the resultant things that we are facing. But it is clearly not easy, and many speakers have spoken and shared many practical experience, including mine actually, which is a failed one. But ultimately, what do we achieve from ZBB is clearly not just cost saving. It is unlocking the potential of the organization that if we just follow incremental, we may not be able to get those things. So I truly feel that pandemic has accelerated many things. ZBB is clearly one of them.
Thank you, Vincent. Excellent insights. Nicholas, what would be your 30 seconds key takeaways?
Well, I hope all the presentation just give all the people in the call in this webinar the willingness to implement and to do ZBB. I hope they are convinced now to move on and try to implement, or maybe try new tools, maybe try to new change agent, but at least to move on. It's really worth it, and this is the key takeaway I would like to share. ZBB is worth it. It's definitely worth it. So if you hesitated prior to this webinar, I hope now you're convinced to move on. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicholas. Next, Pras, your 30 seconds key takeaways, please.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, clearly there's many takeaways, many lessons learned today, many data points in terms of the value gained, and as well, I think one of the key things I learned was obviously from what Vincent mentioned, focusing on those 10% as champions. But once you go beyond that 10%, it's really about having, as mentioned, access to data, access to the right information, being able to collaborate effectively, and really keep the lines of communication open so that this isn't seen as a demoralizing exercise, but rather an exercise that will help increase shareholder value and really benefit the organization overall.
Thank you, Pras. Excellent insights. And Shinta, you are the last with your 30 seconds.
Thanks very much. Obviously, I'm a little bit different. I'm a recruiter, so I'm not the financial specialist. So what I can say is obviously the communication collaboration is the key. With regardless any technology is already implemented. And as Vincent said, I think it's the best opportunity for everyone to plunge into the new sort of a new strategy in place. So why don't we go for it?
Excellent. Thank you everyone for your key takeaways. And we are launching the Q&A session now. Please stay with us. We have a lot of questions, and I would like to remind the participants to continue to send your questions. And even if we don't have enough time to answer all of them, we will answer in writing after the meeting. So the first question is to you, Tom. Could you please help me with your insight on ZBB implementation for long-term financial goals versus short-term financial goals? What would be your insight, Tom?
So I think when you look about, so let's go to the pandemic as an example, right? So everyone wanted to save cash, and so we did a lot of things that actually are not as good in the long run. We postponed projects, we didn't invest in people, we cut salary raises, no bonuses, and whatever your company did to preserve cash. But those are not long-term sustainable things. And I think in ZBB, it's important to kind of focus on long-term benefits, drive better value from your suppliers, reduce your supplier base, better manage spend, question kind of the level of spend by implementing a culture whereby everyone kind of thinks as an owner, if this is my money, would I spend it, right? Using benchmarking to find out why does the maintenance of this building cost so much more than this, looking at your factory maintenance and say, can we do more preventative maintenance to avoid kind of last minute having to call on expensive contractors to come and fix machines. And those are the things you should focus on. I think there will always be a tactical versus strategic approach, right? There's always the need sometimes to hit the quarter, hit the year. But I think it's important to balance it with those structural cost reductions, not just say we won't travel for 2 months at the end of the year to hit your number, for example. So I think that will be my advice. So you need to kind of think of what are the levers, techniques, systems you can put in place to drive long-term value.
Excellent. Thank you, Tom. Vincent, the next question is to you. Thank you for all your useful sharings. What value do you see from procurement function to contribute in a successful implementation of ZBB?
Procurement function. So very clearly, right? Many of us, we look at the entire P&L, and if you look at the entire P&L, a big chunk of it will be PPV, right? So purchase price variance. And in the PPV, procurement function is the leading team, it's like the pillar of the team. And whenever we go through ZBB, my experience, whenever you go through ZBB, the easy part is like travel, lodging, cut travel, cut lodging, especially during pandemic. Everyone will be very open, cut my travel. But when we come to the difficult things like PPV, and especially if your supplier is like having chip shortage, and in my case, like huge chip shortage, it is very, very difficult to say, put in an incremental PPV minus 20%. So ZBB lays out the foundation for us to relook at this era, and therefore I actually think that procurement may be even more important than many of us, more important than me. So many of us in finance, and therefore, this is a fantastic question. Whoever asked this question knew about the situation currently. Procurement is the key to many of the ZBB PPV initiatives.
Thank you, Vincent. Nicholas, the next question is to you. Is everybody in finance active player in ZBB, in your view, or are there any functions such as accounts payable, accounts receivables that are not part of this? And also, how do you choose the key players in the business outside of finance? Thank you, Nicholas.
Well, it's a extremely important question. From this example I showed in Malaysia and in Imeris, where it's within the DNA of Imeris, it's based upon volunteer. So every year, at the beginning of the year, we ask for volunteers who's ready to share, to do experience sharing, and to travel and to do some exercise on ZBB in finance. So I send myself the email to the teams asking if there were people, and there were people from plenty different area. Most of the time they were controllers, but I had some people from accounting, from third-part accounting, and so on and so forth. So it was not limited to controllers. So that was the first part of the question, and then the second part, because it was very much based in industry, the second expert or champions we had for ZBB was coming from operation, and the operation were the expert from the operation were they had to be related to the targeted operation that were demanding for ZBB exercise. So we have less choice, and we were sometimes, to be honest, really asking for a favor to send someone on site to bring their expertise, because it was the same core business, and it makes a lot of sense in terms of experience sharing. So it's a very two different approach in that respect. And coming from HR, it was a company worldwide program, a cross-division program on being able to supply change management program, change management issue, and so on and so forth at every step. That's it. I'm sorry, it's starting to rain. I don't know if you hear it.
Excellent answer. Thank you, Nicholas. Yes. Thank you so much. Pras, you are the next one with very interesting question. Is FP&A technology enough for zero-based budgeting, or do we need additional modules? And also, how do you see artificial intelligence, machine learning changing ZBB practices around the globe?
Yeah, great question. So, I mean, I would say that previous generation FP&A technology it's probably not adequate enough, but modern FP&A technology, which brings together all the data that you have in your ERP and various applications with your HR systems, your travel systems, your spend systems, all of that into one FP&A solution, along with analytics as well. I think Tom talked about dashboards and things like that, being able to communicate and being able to share KPIs or whatnot. So having that built in. So I mean, if you're doing a piecemeal where you have an FP&A tool, but then you're having a dashboarding tool on top of that, then you're having to create integration with your various ERP tools. I mean, you're spending more time gathering and working with data, which isn't helping you move forward and being strategic. Remember, our role is financial planning and analysis. With ZBB, we need to spend more time on the analysis factor. With regards to machine learning and AI, I think this is very complementary, because at the end of the day, you know, for example, as was pointed out, the pandemic really threw things into flux, where you had to look at, you know, really put away what happened in the past and really uncover what you're doing now. And what you're doing now is things such as, you know, in the past and with the pandemic, as I think Tom might have pointed out and others, you cut back on spending, you might have cut back on salaries and other things. with AI and machine learning, you're able to basically take the trends and spends that you're predicting now with ZBB, marry that with historical data, and come out with a new spending pattern that might not be visible to you. It might not indicate exactly what's about to happen, but it can help you indicate what might happen and really give you trends that might not be visible to the human eye.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Pras. And the conclusive question, the last question to you, Shinta. What is the most important skill that FP&A professionals should develop in Asia at the moment? Only one, the most important one.
Sure. As I mentioned in the presentation, it's definitely communication skills. A lot of companies are always asking about what sort of experience have they done in terms of sort of challenges they faced, and then how they get over it, those situations, collaborating with who. That is the main story that all the companies want to hear all the time across Asia Pacific. So it's not just about technical ability, but then always coming along with those, soft skills. And communication is definitely the key for many years and probably in the future as well.
You're on mute, Larissa.
I'm very sorry, so I wasn't mute. So thank you so much for your great commentary, Shinta. And it was the last question, but we have more questions that we will distribute between you after the meeting. And please, dear participants, please continue to send your questions to us. With this, just a few final slides, just to remind everyone that we will have some other webinars, and we would like to invite people to join us. It's about opportunities of managing rolling forecast and scenario planning. The link is here. You're welcome to join. And we will have another webinar about surfing and uncertainty with continuous planning. All the links are here. They will be sent to you as well. Finally, I would like to say thank you so much to our sponsors and partners for supporting us with this webinar. Thank you so much, SAP. Thank you so much, Michael Page. I would like to say thank you so much to all our participants. Thank you for being with us today. Fantastic. It's such a great exposure, so many Asian markets and also other countries as well. Please continue to send your questions. And if you have any interesting insights, you know how to find us. We're always looking for best practice. And finally, our dear panelists, it was fantastic collaboration with you. I think you would agree that it was very synergistic and we learned a lot from each other. Thank you for being part of this. Thank you for supporting our global FP&A community. Let us stay in touch and hope to see you at the beginning of next year when we start to travel. Stay safe, everyone. All the best. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.